Hi everybody, Grandad here again. What am I up to today? Well, today I'm going to show you some hopefully interesting things that I've collected over the years. Now, as you know, or perhaps you don't know, but I do a lot of metal detecting. I haven't done it in quite a while because I'm lost my metal detecting partner, unfortunately, for the moment anyway. So I haven't been out metal detecting for quite some time, and I miss it terribly because it gave me a bit of exercise and got me out and about. And of course you find interesting things. Now today I thought I'd do a little video on some of the things that I found over the years that I've actually dug up. Not all exactly metal detecting, but sort of things that turned up as a result of digging in the ground, or mainly metal detecting. Now the first thing I'm going to show is a coin. Now obviously you find a lot of coins while you're out metal detecting, but this one's rather an interesting coin. It's a hammered coin, and I may have shown it before on another video, but I'll show it again. Now it's not terribly plain to see what it is, but that's what it is. And it's a hammered coin, and it's a 12 penny coin. It's got 10 and 2 lons, so that's a 12, number 12 on there with the Roman numerals, and that makes it 12 pence. So it's quite a valuable coin in its day, and it's made of silver. And these coins are worth perhaps just over £100, I believe. I mean, I've seen them in as good a condition as this that have around about £150. So they're quite valuable to find, but they're nice. I don't do them for finding the money as regards the value, but it's interesting to know that perhaps. On the other side, it's got a shield. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a date on it. But I know roughly what it is because the king on here, if you look at the king on here, I don't know whether you can see it very well on this picture, but he's got a little scouty beard, got a little pointy beard. So I recognise him, and I've got a picture here of him in this little book I've got on kings and queens of England. And that king on that coin is actually Charles I. And there's a picture of him, Charles I. Now, he was quite an interesting king because he was a bit of a tyrant in his day, and he thought that he was a cut above everybody else, and he lived in 1625, so that's about the age of that coin, about 1625, so that's in the 1600s, King Charles coin. Now, he ruled over Parliament, because we had a Parliament back in those days, but he believed in the divine right of kings. Now, that's a strange thing, that a king should be all-powerful and rule over everybody and tell them what to do. And if Parliament wanted to do something and he didn't agree with it, then he went against it, and there was a lot of argy-bargy. So he fell out with Parliament. And the interesting thing about it was he fell out with Parliament, and they sort of rose up against him and said, no, you can't do this. And he imposed taxes on people which were unfair and not very good. And as a result of that, he got himself involved in a civil war. Now, it's the only civil war we've ever had in England, as far as I know. And it lasted for quite a number of years, this battling between people. And another prime person that came to Providence during this time was a chap by the name of Oliver Cromwell. Now, you may have heard of Oliver Cromwell. He was quite an interesting character, and he was come from poor beginnings, but he got up in the army and all that sort of thing, and he went to Parliament and sat in Parliament and things. But he was only a sort of ordinary farming type character, I believe. I'm not sure. I could be wrong on that. If you know any different, tell me. But I believe he came from, common stock, if you like. He wasn't royal in any way. But he worked his way up, and he came to be part of this civil war business. And this battling went on for a long time, and a lot of castles and a lot of country houses, because you had what they call the Roundheads, which were the parliamentarians under Cromwell, and you had the royalists under the king. There was a lot of people that were still loyal to the king and wanted to carry on just as they were. So Oliver Cromwell was battling against them. So there's a lot of houses, a lot of raiding going on, a lot of fighting going on, and it lasted for a good long time. But unfortunately, they had a bit of a peace towards the end, and they got back in together again. But Oliver, poor old King Charles, he wasn't happy. He still wanted to believe that he was the ruler, and they got back into a fight again, and it all ended in disaster. But and in the finish, because of they actually charged King Charles with treason to the people of England, and Oliver Cromwell actually went to trial, and he was found guilty of it, and they actually chopped his head off, which wasn't a very nice thing to do to poor old King Charles I. But he was beheaded, and it's quite an interesting story if you look it up. See how all the interesting story about King Charles I having his head chopped off. Now, Parliament was then ruled obviously by Parliament, and Oliver Cromwell became what's known as the Lord Protector of England, and we became a sort of a, I don't know what they call them now, a democracy. It's not called a democracy. I'm not quite sure what they called it now, but certainly it was done by the Parliament and this sort of thing. We became sort of a republic, I suppose. Is that what they call it? A republic. And for a while we were ruled by the laws of the land through Parliament under the auspices of Oliver Cromwell. And that lasted for a while, but of course eventually things died down, and Oliver Cromwell died, and there was a bit of a gap in the market, if you like, and therefore they decided that we'd go back to royalists again, and not divine kings anymore, but certainly they'd go on to have a monarchy again, and we've still got a monarchy today. And then they came up with Charles I, and then the next king to come on the scene was Charles I, and he's a bit different. I mean, I don't know whether he was his son or something. I think he escaped to France or somewhere like that. I don't know, but they brought him back and made him king. So that's how that came about. So that's the first little interesting thing I've got, a coin. Now I've got another coin here, which is getting off the beaten track a little bit. But I thought I'd show it because I don't think I've shown it on a video before. And this is another coin, but I didn't metal detect this. I must admit, I actually bought this from a charity shop. So you don't have to go metal detecting to find old coins. You can find them all over the place. So keep your eyes open. You never know what you're going to come across. And this coin was up for sale in a charity shop. And I think it was valued. I actually got it valued for the person in the shop there. And they said the chap who I got it valued from offered me £10 for it. So I assumed that that's what it was worth. I mean, it may be worth a little bit more. But this coin is actually a Greek coin. And that's why I'm interested in it. And that's why I actually bought it. I bought it from the charity shop and paid them the money so that they'd got their value, what they thought it was. And that was good. But it's a Greek coin. Now, I've got a lot of Roman coins, which is very interesting. You find a lot of Roman coins because the Romans were in England for well over 400 years, so they lost a lot of coinage. And they had very poor, very small coins, and they got lost. And I've got lots of Roman coins, which aren't very valuable, but they're interesting to find. If you go out metal detecting, you can find these little tiny bronze coins of... Now, I don't know what metal this is made of. It's a very thick coin, as you can see. And on the one side, it's got a sort of a... I don't know whether he's an emperor or a king or what he is, but he's got very woolly hair and a band around his head. I don't know how well you can see it on this camera. I hope you can, because I'm trying to do as best I can with these photographs. And on the other side, it's got some writing, which I can't really read. And it's got an angel. I don't know whether you can see that there. Hope you can. But there's an angel on there. And apparently, according to this chap I took it to, he said that that was a Greek coin. Didn't give me any age on it, unfortunately, or value. As I say, he offered me £10 for it, but we couldn't sell it because it was for the charity shop. So we brought it back and put it on sale in the charity shop. And I was interested in coins, so I bought it. So I thought I'd just throw that in, really, as a little thing to show that I collect coins all over the place, and you never know. Oh, hang on a minute. There's a little bit of paper in here. Let me just see what's something I've written on this bit of paper. I don't know what I've written. It says it's Greek. Nike, the goddess of victory. Maybe that's what that little angel in the back. It's not an angel, it's Nike. And it's got four... Oh, gosh. I can't really tire. I'll put it up because I can't actually read what that says. But maybe you can read it. If you can read what it says there, I'll try and hold it still. I'm a bit shaky. But if you can read what it says there, you might be able to understand what it means. Now, if you know anything about that coin, you are a coin collector and you know something about it, put it in the comments to me. I'd like to hear from you. And if you can tell me any more about that coin, I'd be very interested. But that's that little coin that I got. And I always keep them in these little folders to keep them tidy. Now, probably the oldest thing I've ever found metal detecting, which is of interest, is in this little box here. Now this, believe it or not, in this little box, there's actually two things in here, but this, I was out metal detecting on a site very close to Oswestry where I live, and this site was, they'd found some interesting things back in the past, although at the time I went I didn't realise that it was an ancient site, and they'd found some really clever things on there back in the past, but people had been there before a lot of times. When we went, there were some people there metal detecting as well, and they said, oh, we found everything, there's nothing more to find. You won't find anything here, we found it. All the ancient stuff. But I was not deterred. I carried on and looking around, and lo and behold, in the ground, about 10 inches down, I turned up that. Now that is a Bronze Age axe head. Now it's only tiny. It's only about 4 inches long, as you see, compared to my hand. It's only about 4 inches long, but it's made of bronze. It's got a sharp edge on there, which is obviously for chopping, and it's got some ridges down the side, where I believe they made these in moulds, and they hammered the sides to make this ridge on the side here, and then it would hold in a shaft a bit like that, and in a piece of wood they would hold it in a shaft, and then that would make the chopping action, and so they could chop with it like that on a branch. Now this would have been treasured by somebody. How they come to lose it, I don't know. But sometimes these were thrown into water as offerings to the gods, which is very interesting. And why people would do that, I don't know. But obviously back in the day. But the interesting thing about this bronze axe head is the actual technology. I mean, I've tried melting metals, and I've done a little bit with metals and fiddling around. And you need tremendous heat to melt copper. And it's always been a mystery to me how people have been able to go in the ground and find those green rocks they call malachite, and melt it down somehow in a furnace and get enough heat up. I mean, it's very difficult to get enough heat to melt copper. And copper has been found all over the place, and I visited copper mines from the Bronze Age, and they used to send children down there to dig out the copper, and they'd get it. So obviously the technology was there, but how they discovered it, I don't know. It's a total mystery to me. Now the interesting thing about this is copper itself is not a very strong metal. I mean, it does make, they did use it for a while. It was a copper age where they used copper all the time. But they found that if they mix tin with it, and they get tin in England from down in Cornwall, there's tin mines down there, and they get tin, and it was a big export of tin because obviously tin was a rare metal that they needed. And if they mix it, and I think you put about 90% copper and 10% of tin, and you produce a thing called bronze. It's an alloy of two metals, and it makes it much harder and much stronger. And therefore you can make it into weapons and axes, and that's what this is, a Bronze Age axe. Now, I actually got in touch with the museum people because I thought that this was quite an interesting find and the museum would be interested in it, and they were interested in it. They told me all about it, and they sent me back some paperwork. They told me exactly what it was, and I can't remember at the moment, and I don't know where the paperwork is, which is unfortunate. But what they did tell me was that this is about 2,600 years old. 2,600 years old. That's BC. And obviously now we're 2000 AD, which is Anno Domini, into Christian times. And so this little axe is 3,600 years old at least. And I find that fascinating. And it's a wonderful thing to find. Now, when you're out metal detecting, you've got to be a bit careful. Because sometimes you dig up things and you don't know what they are. And you look at them and you think that's a bit of rubbish. I don't think I'll bother with that. I'll just chuck that away. And that brings you on to this thing. Now, this little thing doesn't look anything. In fact, when I found it, I thought it was a bit of cast iron, and I thought it was a pot leg off a pot or something, and I just chucked it in my bag. But I thought it was a bit of rubbish, and when I got home, I threw it on the side. I just chucked it in my garden on the corner and didn't think any more about it. And I left it there for 12 months more, perhaps longer than that, even longer. I left it there, and one day I picked it up, and I thought, oh, it's that pot leg. I don't know why I'm keeping that. It's a bit of old cast iron. So I just thought, well, if it's cast iron, it'll attract to a magnet. So I got a magnet, and as it happens, I've got one here. And I tried it, and lo and behold, it doesn't stick to the magnet. So obviously it's not cast iron, which I thought it was. So I thought, that's interesting. I'll do a little bit more experimenting. So I ground it. I got a little file, and I ground it on that edge, where it didn't matter because it's already broken on that edge. It's got a broken edge there. And I ground it off. And to my surprise, it's shiny. It's shiny inside. So I think, and I'm not 100% sure, but I rather think that this is actually another Bronze Age axe head that I'd found and didn't realise it. And that was very interesting. I thought, blimey, I could have thrown that away and thought it was nothing, but it looks like the end, looks like one of these ends of a different shaped axe head, which would have been held in perhaps in a rock like that so that you could chop with it. I don't know, maybe a much bigger one. And this is just the very end of it that's just snapped off, and it's a Bronze Age axe head. So that's very interesting. So always check your finds, make sure you've looked at everything really closely, and you know what you found. Now, another thing I found while I was out metal detecting one day, and this thing has puzzled me for a long time, and I don't know whether I put it up on a video or not, but if I haven't, here it is. Now, this is made, which could be bronze, or it could be, it's not iron or steel. It's made of either bronze or it's made of some other kind of metal. It may be brass, I don't know. Brass is a bit soft, I would have thought, so it may actually be bronze as well. Now, this is a very curious thing. It looks as if it's snapped off just here, so it was obviously longer, and but the shape of it is very unusual. It's got a very sharp spike on here, and this corner isn't bent. It's just been it's been made like that, and I suspect it's been made in a mold. I don't know. It's got one or two marks on it that give me the idea that it might have been made in a mold, and it's got a funny little angle here and another little point. Now, this is a very strange looking thing. Now, I have no idea what that is. Now, if you have any idea what that is, and you've seen it, maybe it's part of a piece of farm machinery. I found it in a field, so maybe it's off a hay baling machine. It's a thing for threading the string through, or some kind of needle, I don't know. But what that would be used for, or poking into haystacks to see if they're catching fire inside, and you could push it in and the straw would stick on there and you could tell whether it was getting hot or not. I have no idea. But that's a thing that's been made for a purpose. And what purpose, I have no idea. And if anyone out there knows what that is, please let me know, because I'm really interested in finding out what that is. It's been a real puzzlement to me for a long, long time. Now then, I'll get on because this video is taking a little bit longer. Now, this next thing I'm going to show you is something I dug up. And I think I used a metal detector, but I own some property, and there was a bit of ground nearby, along the side of the road. And at one time there must have been a big ditch there or something. And over the years, either people had thrown stuff into the ditch, or they dug a deliberate hole to throw rubbish away. I don't know. But I was metal detecting there, and I dug up all sorts of things. I mean, it started off with just troughing from a roof, and then I found an old bicycle, and then I found other bits and pieces. And the deeper I got in this hole, the more interesting things I found. And as I went down deeper and deeper, I found all sorts of stuff, which I won't go into now. But they were beer taps. There was things that looked like come from a pub, maybe beer taps and bits of things. And there's things, cast iron, bits from a stove and fires. And there's things from post offices, which was interesting, because there used to be a post office in the village where this actual place was. It was in Montfort Bridge, the place where I used to live. And there was all sorts of stuff in this hole, really interesting. But as I was digging, I pulled up what I thought was a piece of pipe. It looked like a bit of plumbing, a bit of old pipe. But to my surprise, when I examined it, I could see by some of the bits and pieces that were sticking through the rust, because it was absolutely rusted away to nothing. And I pulled it out, and to my surprise, I've got some photographs of it here, and I'm trying to find one that was perhaps taken early on. I haven't took one. I thought I had one with it really all rusted up, but this one is pretty early on, and I'll show you some photographs. These are not terribly good photographs, but there I started to strip it down. As you see, it looks like a bit of pipe, and it's covered in rust. It was all rusty right through, and I started pull it apart, and as I went on, I discovered bits and pieces belonging to it, and I don't know whether you actually see what it is yet, as it's going on, but it turned out I took a lot of photographs of it, and as you can see there, it was very rusty, and a lot of it was completely rotted away. It was absolutely in a right mess, but I managed getting the bits off. There's me working on bits of it, and I cleaned them up, and they were all there, and took a whole host of photographs, and I'll go through them quietly here if I can. That's a close-up of the main part of it, and some other bits and pieces. It took me hours. I spent an awful lot of time working on this item, and very interesting it was too. And it turned out, as you can see from there, obviously you recognise it now, and there's some of the bits I dug out of it, some of the bits in there, and some of them actually silver. I was quite surprised when I got down to some of the smaller pieces. These were actually silver bits that were in the side of it, and also the springs, which were actually broken inside. The main springs were broken inside it, but I still got them, and I saved all the bits, little springs and washers and nuts and bolts, all bits connected to it. Now, what I've done, I've because the barrels were really rotted away, I got some copper tube, and I found some copper tube which just happened to fit nicely down the barrels of this gun, and now I'll bring it in. Now, this is how it looks now, after a little bit of work I've done on it, and it turns out to be what we call perhaps a 12 bore or something like that, and it's a shotgun. Now, it's a double barrel shotgun. As you can see, it's got two barrels there. There's there might have been a little tip on there that's rotted away. I think there's a remnant of a tip where you'd sight it, and it's got the barrels there, and I've cleaned it up, and it's got two hammers that flick back and two there. There's the hammers, and they go back and two, and it's got two triggers and the trigger guard, and it's got a safety catch there, which when you push that little safety catch up, it stops the triggers from being pulled, so you don't fire it accidentally. And it's got a loop there which I think had a cable on it for holding it on. Now, to mend it, because the wood was all rotted, I used car body filler that they mend cars with, and I managed to there's the places where the silver bits go, and they fastened it on, and it was quite decorative. It had pieces on here which were patterned, all rotted away, but I managed to find out from looking at the piece underneath. There's wood underneath this, incidentally, and I was able to see the pattern and how it all went together, and the elaborate way in which that gun was made, and it's quite interesting. Now, as you can see, it hasn't got a butt, what you call a butt end, where you put it up against your shoulder and shoot with it like that. Now, I went round looking at various places to see if I could find something that might help to mend that butt. Now, funny enough, I went to a fair and I found this. Now, this is the butt end of a gun. The end plate's missing off it, unfortunately, but this was a very similar gun to this, I should imagine. It might have been a little bit different design, but it's very decorative, and it's got a funny little bit there, might be silver. And I thought, when I found it, I thought, whoopee, I found a new piece for that gun. But unfortunately, although it's about the same age and the same style, it's slightly different. It doesn't quite fit. The bits wouldn't quite fit within that gun. So it'd fit on there like that. And I don't know whether I can show that very good. But there would be, the gun would be all in one piece. I don't know whether I can tip that down a little bit. Make that a little bit better, I don't know. It's not terribly good, the lighting. But that would complete the gun. So what I thought I'd do, I'd cut it off and fit this end on. But then I thought, no, this is such a wonderfully made piece of wood. And I may come across another gun, who knows. And this has got pieces in it, which may be silver. I don't know whether they look a bit silvery. And that's got the little scotchings, or whatever they call them, in there. So that's a lovely piece of thing. And it cost me about £12. I bought it from a fair. And I thought, well, it's a pity to break that. But while I was actually out and about looking for this, I actually found another one. Now, this one has got a solid metal end on it. It's rather pretty. I paid £5 in butt end of an old brass rifle. And still got the label on it. But it's a very decorative one. It's got bits and pieces on it. Oh dear. My camera's gone a bit wrong now. I've got a low battery. That's a bit of a nuisance. And that's going to, hopefully, not going to shut off on me, but it may well do before I've got it telling me I've got a low battery, so I hope it's not going to shut off. Anyway, it's got a rather interesting little pattern on there. So I'll have to scoot along now, because obviously this camera is going to shut off on me. And it's got a metal fastening that's been put around there. So what I'm thinking of doing is fasten this end and put this butt on it, if I can fasten it. So that's a little project that I've got for the future. Now, I haven't got any pictures really of this gun. I've got a book here which is on weapons and guns and things. And I think this gun is about 1850s. around about the 1800s, 1850s. Now, I got a book here which tells you about firearms and guns. Now, I don't know whether I can do it, but I'll bring it in if I can. Bring this camera in a bit closer. And you can see on here, there's a picture. It's got lots of guns, but if you look at this one here, if I can point at it, somebody's done a little illustration. They haven't got a picture of a real gun, but they've made a little illustration here of a double-barreled shotgun. And this is the same sort of gun as I've got. So that's very interesting. So it's in this little book, and it's about 1850, so that's probably about the age of that gun. Now, while I'm on the subject, these guns were actually the ramrod. They used to load these through the top, through the barrel. They put a bullet down there and ram it with a thing. Now, they loaded them with powder using a thing like this. Now, this is a powder flask I bought to go with this gun as a display piece. And this is what they would have loaded the black powder into the gun with. It's called a powder flask, and you flick the little end there, and then the powder comes out and it measures the amount of powder you need to fire the gun. So that's a little interesting little part of that. And I've got a little bit off the sidetrack now. What am I going to do? Oh, the next thing I was going to do. Now, the actual firing mechanism, I don't know whether you can see that on there, but on that one, there's a little tip there, a little pip. Now, this isn't a flintlock. You didn't have flints in here. They had what they called caps. Now, caps are very interesting. And I've got some caps here with this little... I've got another funny little gun here. It's only a toy, but it's very interesting because I bought these things they call caps. And if I can undo it... Oh, gosh. Sealed up a little bit better than I thought. We'll try and cut this. I stuck some paper on it so that it doesn't come all about. And I've got some little caps. Now these are known as caps. And they come with this little gun, and you pull them off and you stick them on that little tip there. And it works in a very similar way to what that percussion cap would have worked on that shotgun. Now, hopefully, if this works, I don't know whether it's going to, but if this works, this little cap will go off. It'll be a bit of a loud bang, so if you've got earphones in, I suggest you take them out or cover your ears, because this might be quite loud. We'll give it a try. Oh, it's not going to go. No, it's not going to go for me. No. Oh, that's a pity. I was hoping that was going to go with a big bang. Oh dear. Oh, my cap gun is not working. It may well be that my caps have got wet. I don't know. There he goes. Ha ha! Got it in the end. Oh well, there we go. It was a little bit loud, and it took a little while to get going. But that's an interesting little thing that I made. And incidentally, I forgot to tell you when I was talking about my my Bronze Age axe, which I'll just show again. That Bronze Age axe. Now, I thought that the museum would take this off me. But of course they didn't. They weren't interested in it. Apparently they've got hundreds of them. They're not interested in Bronze Age axe heads. And incidentally, this is probably worth £100 or so. They're not very valuable. And as they say, I wouldn't sell it. It's something that I found, and I don't sell things I find. But what I did, because I thought that they were going to take it off me, I actually made a mould of it. So that I could, two things really. One, so that I could have a record of what I found and what it looked like, so show people. And the other one was to give to the farmer on the field, who allowed me to go metal detecting. I thought if the museum take the actual original, if I can make some copies, then obviously I can give them to people, and you know, the farmer can have one as well. So I made copies. Now this is a copy of that, which is quite interesting. It's exactly the same. I made it in a little mould, because I know how to do that. And this is actually made of plaster of Paris. It's not made of metal, but I painted it with a metal type stuff. So it looks more like the original bronze colour, because bronze obviously isn't this green verdigris colour, which is how you dig it up. But I don't want to clean it off. I want it just how it was in the ground. So I leave the verdigris on. But this is how it would have looked. A shiny tool, which a Bronze Age man would have used and treasured. So that's interesting. Anyway, that's the end of my little video. It's gone on 30 minutes, which is a lot longer than I thought. And I hope it's not going to cut off too soon because I've run out of battery on my phone. But hopefully it's going to run. But if you like this video and you've got any comments on it, put them up on the comments. and subscribe to my videos if you can. I'd love you to do that, and pass on the information, and maybe I'll get a few more subscribers. And if you like this video, put a like on it, because I like doing them and I like showing you things. And if you find this interesting, that'll be great. Anyway, as usual, Grandad signing off. Until next time, and I find something else interesting, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from him. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.